This is Randy Snow from the podcast This Week in the World of Football. Today I want to introduce you to 5 books that you may not be familiar with, but are incredibly awesome and important in football history, and they should be part of your football library. There's only 2 criteria for books to make my list. 1, they have to be part of my vast World of Football library here. And 2, I actually have to have read them. So, let's begin. I have 5 books today, 1 from high school, 1 from college, 1 from the Arena Football League, 1 from the CFL, and 1 from the NFL. So, let's begin. The first book I want to talk about today is a book called The Way We Played the Game, and this was written by John Armstrong and published in 2002. It's about the 1903 Benton Harbor, Michigan high school football team. Now, in 1903, this is way before the forward pass was legalized, and the coaches could not interact with the players during the game. They literally had to sit on the sideline and say nothing while the game was going on. The quarterback ran everything back in those days. Armstrong wrote this book after discovering a box of old faded newspaper clippings at his late grandmother's house that she had saved because she was a student during the time that this book was written. Benton Harbor High School. She went there from 1902 to 1904. And back in those days, there were only 3 downs to go 5 yards. They had games during that season against various high school teams, but they also played, if you can get this, against Notre Dame and Kalamazoo College. They actually beat Notre Dame in that game. There are some great pictures in this book. Even though this is a fictionalized account of actual events, it's an awesome book, and there are pictures of the actual players that are featured in the book and some of the events that took place. You get to see it all, so I cannot recommend this book highly enough. This is an awesome book. It's called The Way We Played the Game by John Armstrong. The next book I want to talk about is a book called Pop Warner, A Life on the Gridiron by Jeffrey J. Miller. This book was published in 2015. Now, Pop Warner started out playing college football at Cornell. He also coached at Georgia, Cornell, Carlisle, Pittsburgh, Stanford, and Temple over his great career. He was a great innovator of the game, and he was famous for inventing something called the hidden ball trick play. This is where he had pockets sewn into the back of several players on the team, and when they took a punt, they all got together in a huddle, and the guy with the ball would slip the ball into a pocket in the back of another player, and then they would all take off running in different directions. Nobody knew where it was. Now, technically, this was not illegal at the time. It was after this happened. But he ran this play, and he got a lot of criticism for it. A lot of people didn't like it. They thought it was unsportsmanlike, and so he caught a lot of flack for that, and he never used it again. But that's featured in this book also. Pop Warner also coached Jim Thorpe at the Carlisle Indian School, and he also coached Thorpe in the 1912 Olympics, where Thorpe won the decathlon and pentathlon. He also coached Ernie Nevers when he was at Stanford, and he coached him in the 1924 Rose Bowl, where they played against Notre Dame, the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame, who won the national championship that year. Warner later appeared as himself in the movie Knute Rockne All-American in 1940, the movie that featured Ronald Reagan as George Gipp. Like I said, this is a great book. I loved reading it. I got to know Jeff Miller after this. Jeff Miller is a great guy. He only has one flaw. He's a diehard Buffalo Bills fan. Well, nobody's perfect. The next book is called War on the Floor by Jeff Foley. This was published in 2001. Like George Plimpton in Paper Lion, Foley had no football experience when he attended training camp with the Albany Firebirds of the Arena Football League in 1999 and 2000. And he wrote this book from the perspective of what it's like to be a player on an arena football team. He was an offensive specialist, which was basically a wide receiver, and he actually played during 3 preseason games between those 2 seasons. He was a former staff writer of the Albany Times-Union newspaper. One of the players featured in the book was touchdown Eddie Brown. You may not be familiar with him, but you probably know his son, Antonio Brown, the wide receiver in the NFL. As far as I know, this is the only book that was ever written about the Arena Football League. If there are more, I'd love to have them in my collection, but this is the gold standard as far as books about the Arena Football League. The day-to-day grind of where they stayed, how they practiced, where they ate, how they traveled to games. It really gives you an inside story of what the Arena Football League was like. So this is another great book, War on the Floor by Jeff Foley. I highly recommend it. Next is The Waterboy. From the sidelines to the owner's box, inside the CFL, the XFL, and the NFL. This book was written by Bob Ackles, and it was published in 2007. In 1953, the British Columbia Lions were founded, and Bob Ackles was the team's very first water boy that year. He worked his way up through the team, becoming the assistant equipment manager, and eventually the general manager of the team, and he was the general manager when they won a Grey Cup in 1985. In 1986, he was hired as the Dallas Cowboys Vice President of Player Personnel. From 86 to 91, he presided over the sale of the Cowboys to Jerry Jones, the firing of head coach Tom Landry, the mega trade that sent Herschel Walker to the Vikings. 3 events in Cowboys history that will go on forever, and Bob Ackles had a front row seat for all of that. He also was with the Arizona Cardinals from 92 to 94, the Philadelphia Eagles in 1995, and the Miami Dolphins from 96 to 99. Ackles also spent the 2001 season in the front office of the Las Vegas Outlaws of the XFL. In 2002, he returned to the British Columbia Lions, and he rebuilt the team and won a second Grey Cup in 2006. He was inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame in 2002. This was an awesome book. Bob Ackles had a fascinating life, and he tells you all about it, from the CFL to the NFL to the XFL. The last book on my list is a book called 3 Week Professionals by Ted Kluck, which was published in 2015. You may recall the 1987 players' strike and the fact that they brought in replacement players for 3 games. Well, Ted interviewed several players that were replacement players during the 87 season and got the story of what it was like to be on an NFL team at that time. One of the players was quarterback Mike Hohensee, who played for the Chicago Bears. He went on to play for the USFL's Washington Federals and previously played in the Arena Football League with the Pittsburgh Gladiators. To me, he's most known as a great coach in the Arena Football League for many years with the Chicago Rush. 3 Week Professionals is a great book. It gives you a real inside look at what it was like during those 3 weeks of the 87 players' strike and what the players went through to be on those teams. And those are my 5 books that you need to read, and they need to be part of your personal football library. The Way We Played the Game by John Armstrong, Pop Warner by Jeffrey Miller, War on the Floor by Jeff Foley, The Waterboy by Bob Ackles, and 3 Week Professionals by Ted Kluck. So until next time, happy reading.